minds?
You mind?
Alright, so you guys all know who I am.
What's your name?
If you don't, you should. I'm Brad Nauss. Quick question. I was hoping to get everybody over here. Alright, so I think I know the answer, but how many of you currently own a Citroën? Alright, that's pretty good. Alright, so how many of you owned a Citroën 10 years ago? Oh, now they're starting to fall. How about 20 years ago? Oh, we still got them, hands coming up. How about 30 years ago? Alright, we got a few. Alright, how about 40 years ago? Oh man.
I'm not that old.
Barely alive. Alright,
Yes, I did.
okay.
You're much old.
Alright. So how about how many of you worked on Citroëns 42 years ago? Well, I guess it looks like there's only one person that owned or worked on Citroëns in 1975. I guess I'm going to be able to get away with whatever I want to tell you, because nobody's going to know the difference. All right, so takes the pressure off of me. All right, so anyhow, this crazy quiz that I put together, I was actually quite surprised by some of the things I found out. I was very, very fortunate. The earliest Citroën Factory USA parts book that I had in my possession was from the mid-'80s. I mentioned to a friend of mine who was a Citroën dealer and repair shop in San Francisco back in the day, by the name of Don Garriott, who is now retired but still works on a lot of Citroëns. I think he's about 80 years old. He sent me a USA factory parts book that is dated February 1st, 1975. So that is probably as early a parts book as I was going to find. So I appreciate him doing that. As I noted on this quiz, the current prices are actually what I sell the parts for today. I like to think that I'm probably very competitive with my pricing compared to anyone in this country. There's no way in H that myself or anyone else who imports parts here could compete with prices in Europe, and that's just how it works. Because unless I'm going to make do on my looks, I got to make a little bit of money.
You wouldn't make it on your looks.
Yeah, you got it, buddy.
Keep on doing what you do.
All right, so how many of you thought that the warranty on brand new CITROEN parts was a year? All right, so how about 90 days? Because 90 days is how long they were warranted. All right, so 90 days. Now here's the other interesting thing that I would have never dreamed, and maybe I'm doing it wrong, because I usually, if somebody buys a part from me today and they don't put it on their car for 30 days, I usually try to give some leeway. The next question, the warranty is stated in this book that it begins on the date the part was invoiced by Citroën to the dealer.
Oh, that sucks.
So if the dealer bought a part and put it in stock for 30 days or 90 days, or in some cases for 5 years, they were SOL. Because the dealership apparently was not going to get reimbursed for warranty. Wow. How many of you guessed what number for how many distribution depots Citroën had in North America?
I said 2.
I said
2.
two.
There's a 3. 3 is the number, and there was one on the East Coast in New Jersey, there was one in California, and there was one in Montreal.
Well, that was not U.S.
No, I said in North America.
North
America. You gotta read the question.
Tricky question.
Please.
All right, so how about 1975 price for LHM?
$3.75.
I wish it was $1.95. $4.20.
Oh.
So when you look at how much LHM is today, which is the next question, I retail it for $16.50.
Yeah.
And when you look at how much the dollar has changed in value, $4.20 was not exactly cheap. I would not doubt that you could buy Dexron fluid for less than $1 a quart back then.
That's why everybody used it.
And that's again why. Now here's another interesting one, and probably more people are going to know the answer to number 7 than to number 6. What do you think a Weber carburetor hose costs today retail? Anybody? $97.49.
I'm good with that.
Okay, and that is not cheap, but I guess we're lucky that they actually make a reproduction part. How much do you think one was in 1975? And maybe we all should have bought 100 of them.
$15.73.
$6.44. Can you imagine that? So, how about a DS oil filter? How many of those have you bought recently? I'll tell you right up front that my price is probably the cheapest in the country at $13.50 a piece. How many times is that what they were in 1975? 3 times.
Really?
3 times as much. How about a piston liner set? Any guesses?
I would call 4 times.
2.5 times. Actually, the price of piston liner sets has gone down from probably about $800 to $900 5 years ago, and they're now probably in the neighborhood of about $600 or a little bit less.
Where is it made?
China.
No, they're. I don't doubt that they're probably manufactured in Eastern Europe, but that's coming out of Europe, and it's
Pretty good unit.
good quality. Good quality with a good warranty. All right, how about a fuel pump? Now you got to remember that the sort of the what we've been seeing. DS fuel pump today only costs about twice what it did back then, which you would have thought it would be a lot more than that. For a DS21, they're probably about $75. How about a pressure plate? Dave Agard knows the answer to this, baby. A rebuilt pressure plate today, a good quality one out of Europe, which is the only place to get them, is 5 times what the price was for a brand new factory part.
Wow.
I want a factory part.
Well, it's a rebuilt versus a new. All right, so say you went to your dealer, and I find it sort of funny that they even have a list price on this. What would it have cost you to have bought a 5 gallons of LHM in 1975? $72. All right, so how many of you have bought spheres lately for a D model? Anybody have a guess on a pair of spheres? Dave knows the answer to this. 186 a pair.
Okay.
But you know what? That same pair in 1975 for factory spheres, of course, those are aftermarket. They probably come out of the same factory that Citroën's using. But a pair of DS spheres in 1975 was $130. So you think in 1975 that was a lot of money, an awful lot of money. How about an exhaust system? Anybody have any guesses for the front to back, except for the downpipe?
185.
155.
155.
And that's no jive.
He bought 2 of them.
And how about today? How many times that, roughly?
Twice.
3 times.
3, 4,
3.5.
3.5.
And that's for steel. If you go for stainless steel, you don't even want to hear it.
Big bucks.
All right, so an upper radiator hose for a DS21, and again, my price is cheaper than on the West Coast, $111. How much you think one was in 1975?
15 bucks.
35, not 95.
$9.
$9. Yeah, I was gonna say $9.
George, you were there. You know, George wasn't over here when I was asking the questions. George was driving a DS when I was 15 years old, I think, right?
You were working, so
I was working. I started there when I was 15. So you've had a Citroën on and off for 42 years, 40 years at least. How about a rebuilt short block for an SM, all you SM people? How much do you think one of them was in 1975?
2,800 bucks.
Nope. $37.50.
Really? Holy
That was a pretty expensive engine in 1975. If you want real sticker shock, Dave, how much would a short block cost today to rebuild? $5 grand? At least. Probably more than that. The last number that I heard for a rebuilt engine on the West Coast was probably like $13,000 or $14,000. And that
Well, that's had the race parts.
but you know.
Yeah, we definitely, for an SM engine, it's got 8,000 to 9,000 minimum.
Yep.
Really?
All right. Okay. So, how about a tinted windshield for an SM?
Oh,
Try to get one of them today for less than $1,000.
yeah, unavailable.
$210.
I'll buy it.
There's probably some screwed warehouse somewhere that wants to do that.
But if you had a lowly D model, you could buy one for $140.
Okay.
And right now they can retail around $400. I think I got John a deal on one for $300 maybe.
You could get 350 was.
Yeah, $300 or $350. But you got to know where to get them, and you got to be patient because they're not always available.
Made in Israel.
No, they're the last one. I'm not sure. I didn't see his look at it. May have been made in Australia.
Yeah.
Pilkington glass. I can take you over and show you Pilkington glass in my new Honda, and that's who's making a lot of the reproduction windshields. But again, it's hit or miss when they're available. How about a new ring and pinion for your 5-speed SM? I don't even know that I could find one of them today. Maybe from Harry Martin's. Maybe. Any guesses on that?
165.
You got it.
I got one way back when New Jersey, they had, and what was the guy's name? He had an SM2.
Okay.
I forgot the name.
You're
but
probably talking about Paul Ivis.
Paul Ibis, that's the one. That's the one.
I spoke to Paul Ivis within the last month.
Is that right?
He's retired in South Carolina and doing pretty well.
I got still the bill for that one.
All right, so how much do you think one was for a 4-speed DS21?
Probably the same because it's the same gear.
$150.
A little discount.
All right, so here's an interesting one that sort of shocked me. Michelin tires. If you were used to driving a D model and then you bought an SM, how much more did an SM tire, factory tire, cost for your SM than for your DS21?
I would say
$100.
$100.
$70, which I guess compared to today is not that bad. You know,
How much more?
yeah, how much more? Not $70 a piece. 4 doors for a 72 DS21. Today, I'd hate to say what it would cost to get reproduction, and you might be lucky enough to get door skins or maybe a whole reproduction door. How much for 4 new doors from the factory? $575.
A bit over 100 bucks.
Very cheap. All right, and how about a rebuilt 5-speed gearbox for a SM? Again, I wish I'd have bought a few back then.
Eight or nine.
$750 exchange.
Oh boy.
And I think there was a whopping $50 core charge, if I remember right.
Hey Dave, we want to know how much that is.
All right, so here's the bonus question. What part that is sold today is only 15% different than the price of what it would have been in 1975.
The bearing? Throw bearing?
Nope. Brake disc.
Really?
Front brake disc for a SM and D model are basically not very much more than they were back then. I'd have to look it up, but I think they're about $100 a piece right now.
You know, $100
retail.
a roller doesn't seem outrageous for today, but back then that would have been astronomical.
Yep.
How many hours would it take to replace the rollers?
Yeah, it's a day job, long day job.
So I mean, we probably would have had even back then, what, $500 to do a brake job, maybe?
All right, so anyhow, now we have an idea of changes that have taken place with parts prices. It'd be amiss if I didn't discuss about availability. CITROEN was required by federal law, I think back then, to provide parts and support for the vehicles for 7 years. And I think that was the case back then after sales ended for that model. I mean, CITROEN they could have completely pulled out of this market around 1980. My feeling is that one of the reasons they didn't do that was because their parent company, which was then Peugeot, was still in this market. And CITROEN parts were marginally available from CITROEN until at least the mid-80s. And again, I have that 1986 factory US parts book that proves that they were at least selling parts in the mid-80s. I wasn't very involved with buying or selling parts in the mid-80s. I was busy repairing cars, mostly Peugeots, I hate to tell you at that point. But there were a few retail and wholesale CITROEN parts specialty suppliers in the USA who actually became more cost effective to buy parts from than buying them through CITROEN. After Peugeot stopped selling cars here in 1991, think about how long ago that is already, Peugeot really downsized, and especially after that 7-year period. Sometime before I left the dealership, which was the end of 1993, CITROEN officially closed their warehouse in New Jersey. I think the one in California had closed long before that. And
How about in Montreal?
I'm not. I have no idea about Montreal. But anyhow, the gentleman that he mentioned was one of the last people who actually were in the warehouse. He was originally a factory service rep who traveled around and took care of warranty and all that kind of stuff. But he was the last one who was actually dealing with the parts in the warehouse. And he's told me that the word came down from the top that they were going to lease the warehouse or sell it or whatever, and it needed to be empty. And there was no discussion about how long it was going to take. It needed to be empty. Red Dellinger traveled to New Jersey. I don't really remember how he got there. I would imagine he probably took the bus, which was pretty common in those days. And I'll mention about that when the last couple years that we were selling CITROEN, the cars weren't brought in on car carriers. Red would take a handful of guys, they'd take the bus to New Jersey, get a taxi, they'd go to Lyndhurst, and they'd drive them home. And one of the things they all learned very quick was to set the parking brake so that you could use it as a foot brake and it wouldn't lock, so that when they went through a speed trap they could slow down without the brake lights coming. So needless to say, we were adjusting parking brakes before the car went out. But anyhow, Red rented one of the largest straight body rental trucks that you could get, and came back to Lewisburg with it stuffed full of CITROEN parts. I have no idea what kind of a deal they struck, I'm sure there was money that changed hands. I have no idea how much or
Where did it go?
how, but I don't know. I would imagine that Paul Ivis made some kind of a deal, but I couldn't tell you that, and I don't know that he would either. But I can tell you that a huge number of parts came back to Lewisberry. But I can also tell you that a fair number of parts ended up going to the Citroën reps place where he lived also. And I've bought parts from him as recently as a year ago. And he still had brand new factory parts sitting in his house. But that was basically, as far as I know, the end of any Citroën parts inventory in the United States by Citroën themselves. However, Peugeot, when they quit selling out of their warehouse, which would have definitely been later than that, or maybe about that same time, they used Caterpillar, who was based in Allentown, as their parts distribution company. So if you ordered a Peugeot part, it came in a Caterpillar box from their warehouse. And the word was that if you got a hold of the right people at Peugeot, or they actually had a presence in New York City, I think, Citroën did, you might be lucky enough to get some LHM or something like that, but there wasn't very much else. And Dave might know the answer to this. I'm not really sure, but I think that maybe the last officially recognized Citroën service point in the United States was probably Jerry Hathaway. And I don't know how that worked, but I know that Jerry did advertise that he was still an authorized Citroën service point for many, many years. So I don't know at what point he was unable to order parts definitely directly from Citroën. So after I opened my business in 1994,